Oh, we are live. I think. Yeah, I think we are. Usually I do these live streams and I do them like the way I make my videos is I do a live stream, but I do a live stream with where it's set to private and then I make it public later. Like that. But hold on a second. But this is a real live stream. So I forgot for a second there, like, oh yeah, this is like for real. There could be people in the chat and stuff. But anyway, what is up, fight nerds and dirty gamblers? I am Eric. This is Eric Bets Fights. It's January 8th, 2023. We're already 8 days into 2023, gang. This my whole point of doing this video today, there isn't like we're going to talk shop a little bit. We will talk about MMA gambling a little bit, but like I said in the like it shows on the name of the video there, the state of Eric's life address or whatever. I'm going to talk about, I always tell you guys, I don't really have in real life friends, I don't really have much of an IRL social life, so like the YouTube folks, the Twitter folks. I just admit it. Y'all are my friends. Y'all are my family. So who am I going to talk to about this crap? My wife gets tired of hearing me talk about the same stuff over and over again. So I just decided to pop on and do a little bit of a live stream, talk about our bets for 2022 a little bit, but then also just kind of talk about life and how things are going. I haven't done a video in a few weeks now. We just had this 3 or 4 week break or whatever, and we've got UFC card coming up. The break is almost over already. We've got the UFC card coming up 1 week from yesterday, so it'll be Saturday? Yeah, Saturday the 14th. Turns out I'm not going to be able to get tape done for this card, but that's okay. I'm not going to worry about it. I got crap going on. We're going to get to that. But first of all, let's take a look at this. I'm not going to go into like a ton of detail on this. I thought about like, some cappers do like an end of the year thing where they go through like all their bets for the year and all this kind of stuff. I'm not going to do stuff like that. But I figured, we gotta at least talk shop a little bit, or what was this video doing on the channel, right? Oh man, Paul Harris is here. What's up, Mr. Owens? Paul Harris calls me Kevin Owens. That's cool. And then Daz, what would any stream be without Daz? She's a good listener. Yeah, dude, she has to be, because I talk a lot. And I mostly talk about MMA gambling, which she doesn't care about, but she's a trooper. We're gonna get to that in a little bit here. But first of all, let's go ahead and take a look at we're going to take a look at this stuff just a little bit, just kind of how my year went and how things have been going so far. I started tracking I've been betting on fights off and on for probably 15 years, or I don't know, longer than that even. Maybe the first fight that I remember betting on was Randy Couture versus Chuck Liddell. I can't remember if it was the rematch or the first fight. And then I also remember betting on Jonathan Goulet versus Dwayne Ludwig. So back then, those are like the first, and I didn't even know. I also remember betting on a Sakuraba fight in Pride, but I can't remember which fight it was. And that was when, like, I didn't even know what a money line was. I didn't know, like, I didn't even have any idea how the payouts worked or anything. I was just like, I'm going to put $50 on this dude to win. Like, so that was the first times I bet on fights. And then probably 10 years ago or something, I actually was a subscriber to Luca Fury's service at one point in time. So I rode with him for a while. And anyway, I started like taking this MMA betting thing more seriously in October of 2021. So like almost a year and a half ago or so. But anyway, so you can see on the screen here, we've got my Bet MMA stats up. So far, total, since I started tracking October 9th, 2021, I'm up 54.79 units for an ROI of 8%. But let's take a look at the details of that a little bit, if we can get this thing to cooperate with me. There we go. Okay, I'm not going to look at all that, but so it breaks it down year by year right here. So we see in 2021, I ended 2021 up 42 units with 29% ROI. I was looking good. And mind you, I started tracking it on October 9th. So October, November, December. It was only 3 months. So I kicked ass for I was up 42 units, 29% ROI in 3 months. And so I moved into 2022 thinking, man, I should be able to win like 100 units in 2022. I just won 42 units in 3 months. It should be no problem. I had really unrealistic expectations, and I don't think I got cocky or anything, but I was like, I did think there was some beginner's luck involved, because I still, I don't think I'm a particularly sharp capper. I mean, I'm a huge MMA fan. I love the sport. I know a lot about the sport, but that doesn't mean that I'm necessarily excellent at, analysis and breaking down fights. I'm trying to get better at it. I'm trying to learn that skill, but I didn't necessarily roll into 2022 thinking like I'm super good at this, but I thought like, hey, this isn't so hard. Like I can do this, and then things evened out. Actually, let's go back here and look at this again. You can actually see visually pretty easily like kind of how things went. So if we look right here, like look at that. We're going up and up and up and up and up. And I don't know exactly what the dates are here or whatever, but this is the, right here is the point where we went down, we went up, but it's kind of just been a lot of sideways. Like if you look right here, UFC 273. Actually, hold on a second. Let's see when that was. UFC 273. There's probably a way I can see it on this graph here, but I don't know. So I'm just going to do this. Okay, April 2022. April 2022 is when things kind of started to push sideways. So like I had 65 units of profit in April 2022, and I ended the year with 54. So and the highest I got was up to 74. So like, yeah, we pretty much just did a lot of pushing sideways here. And, I've learned some lessons. Obviously, there are some lessons I should have learned, but probably didn't. But, I'm not discouraged, and I'm excited for 2023. I'm excited to keep this thing going. But, and also, if you've been following me for a while on Twitter and on YouTube, you kind of know, what I'm all about. I'm not trying to be, I'm never going to be a tout. I'm not interested in like trying to convince anyone that I'm the best at this or that my bets are worth money or anything. They're not. I'm not the best at this. I'm never going to be. I don't intend to be. But it's something I just really enjoy doing. I'm a lifelong fight fan. I love betting on fights and basically doing tape and learning about the fighters. It just makes me feel closer to the sport. It just makes me feel more a part of this whole thing, and my unit size is $10, my unit size is $10. So sometimes I do 15. But, so I'm not trying to like make a lot of money at this. If I do make money, great. But, I don't have a huge bankroll or whatever. So really, this is just something I do as a hobby. Like if my units were larger, if I did have $100 units or something like that, I probably would bet differently because then I'd be concerned about losing money, because I think a lot of people kind of do it this way, especially people who aren't like super serious at this, but are just kind of doing it as a hobby. Like I do my tape. I listen to a lot of other people's shows, watch YouTube shows, listen to podcasts, I take notes on that crap. I look at the stats, I do all that stuff. And then I put in my bets that are like my smart bets early in the week. Like, okay, these are my reads. These are the spots I like. And then throughout the week, I'll sneak in some more spots here and there that I was maybe leaning toward. And then a lot of times, like Friday night or even Saturday morning, like before the fights start, I just throw a bunch of other crap into just because I want to have fun, like if I was being smart about it, I wouldn't do that, like, so it's clear where my mind really lies with this. I'm just trying to have a good time. If I'm like, oh man, my first action on this card isn't until like 6 fights in, I'm like, well, I got to make some more bets then just so I have some action earlier in the card. Anyway, so yeah, you can see how we went up and up and up, and then we went sideways for most of 2022. But yeah, that's just how it went. I'm gonna go back to back here again. So yeah, 42 units, 29% ROI in 2021. But hey, green is green, right? 2022, we went up 12.8 units, 2% ROI. It's not great. But considering how many cappers lost, a lot of people ended up in the red. A lot of people that I really look up to and have been listening to it for a long time ended up in the red. So I am not going to beat myself up over not, kicking 2022's ass too much. I'm not going to get into I'm not going to get into these stats too much and stuff. But one thing that is interesting to me that I keep seeing, like the way I looked on big underdogs after 2021 was freaking fantastic. But still, I'm hitting big underdogs 31% of the time for 23% ROI. That's pretty good. Slight underdogs is where I'm getting my butt kicked. Minus 25% ROI there. Slight favorites, 12% ROI. Big favorites, 18%, which is interesting because most people, slight favorites is where, and I don't think that's just in MMA. I think that's in sports gambling in general. Slight favorites is where people struggle to make money. And that's because, if you're in the range of a lot of the time, generally, I'm generalizing a lot here, but generally speaking, if you've got a fight that's close to a coin flip, if you've got a fight where one guy is minus 120 and one guy is plus 110 or something, you're going to be better off taking that underdog most of the time because obviously the public agrees that it's a close fight and one of the guys is plus money, so like I said, I'm oversimplifying that, but yeah, that's why a lot of people lose on slight favorites, but I apparently lose on slight underdogs. So anyway, but those of you who are watching this, who are content creators, this is another one of those weeks where, like I said, I'm not going to be able to finish tape for the Gastelum Imavov card coming up next weekend. So this is where I'm going to again implore you. I'm going to be riding with some of you guys, so I'll be looking forward to checking out everybody's videos and stuff because that's where I'm going to be getting my information from. Anyway, enough about that. What I really wanted to talk about, I put on the image for this video, state of Eric's life address. And I feel weird doing this. I don't want this to come across as some like bitch session where I'm complaining about my life or something, but I'm just trying to put some information out there. But so I basically have 3 areas I want to talk about right now. Area number 1, we had some unexpected things happen with our house. Our water main broke, and getting a water main replaced costs a lot of money. From looking around, what I saw, it's like it can be like $5,000 or $6,000 for most houses. Our house is kind of weird. Our house has like a courtyard. Like if you're looking at our house from above, it's almost like a U, and then there's a fence here, and this part on the inside is like a courtyard. So like next to me here, I have a big sliding glass door, and if I step outside that sliding glass door, I'm outside, but there's a fence separating me from the yard. So it's like part of our house. It's like an atrium, kind of like it's part of our house, but it's outside. Anyway, and it's the ground is cement out there. They had to cut through that cement to change or to fix our water main, to put in a new one. So it cost us just shy of $10,000 to get a new water main put in. We just bought this house like a year ago. And I am not a man of means. Like after I pay my my monthly payment on my car and pay the mortgage and pay the bills, I don't have a ton of money left over, as evidenced by the fact that my unit size is $10, right? That's why when I look at people who are throwing around like thousands of dollars a card, I'm like, where does all your money come from? That's why I get so confused about that. After I pay for the things I need to pay for, I don't have a whole lot of money left. So anyway, and we also need a new air conditioner, which in some parts of the country, air conditioning is a luxury. I live in Las Vegas. Air conditioning is absolutely a necessity because it gets to be 110, 115 degrees here and stuff during the summer. Anyway, so we had to get a new water main and a new air conditioner, and we had to take out a loan for those things. And so that's been wearing on my mind because it's going to be like $300 a month for that payment, and I already don't have like a whole lot of extra money to throw around. So that's been something that's kind of been stressing me out, is, oh crap, like getting this stuff taken care of and having to pay for this new loan and stuff. And then those of you who've been following me on Twitter lately probably know this already. Then I lost my job a couple days ago, which was, pretty unexpected. I'm a trivia writer. What the heck? I'll go into this a little bit. I've been a longtime trivia fan. I love trivia. I love random facts and that sort of thing. Been a longtime trivia player. And the way I got involved in trivia was I used to be a stand-up comedian, and I had some friends that worked at a restaurant in Fargo, North Dakota, where I lived for like 20 years. And, they were looking for some ideas to like get more people in the restaurant. And, a lot of places especially Tuesdays and Wednesday nights, those are the big nights for trivia, because those are the nights that locations need to bring in more people. And they were like, you know what, let's start doing a trivia night. Maybe let's give that a try on Tuesday nights. And they're like, well, hey, Eric's a comic, so he likes to talk on the microphone and he loves trivia. Like maybe Erik would be a good guy to host trivia. So they asked me if I wanted to do it, and I jumped at the opportunity. I was very active in comedy at that time, so I was already on the mic all the time. I saw it as an opportunity to like, hey, this is one more time that I can be like essentially getting stage time in every week. So, getting comfortable with all of that. So yeah, I started hosting trivia at this restaurant in downtown Fargo, and it like blew up. The trivia night blew up. Like it turned into, and this place was just like a restaurant. Obviously it had a bar in it, but it was really more of a restaurant than a bar. So it was almost kind of a weird place to do trivia anyway, but it turned into like Tuesday nights in that place. It was packed. Packed. Like standing room only. Like there were teams, like there would be trivia teams like standing against the wall and writing on the wall, because there were trivia teams like sitting on the floor. Like it got absolutely ridiculous. It blew up. We had nights in there where there were 30, 40 teams, hundreds of players. It was crazy. And so, through word of mouth, like other places started finding out, like, holy crap, like something's going on. Like this trivia is doing really, really well. Excuse me. So before long, another place asks me to come host trivia there. So I do. And then another place, and then another place. And it was, I didn't even, have any plan to do this. It just happened by word of mouth because my trivia nights were going really well. And then, it came time. I was like, well, I should probably like make a Facebook page so I have a place to, up to that point, only the locations were promoting. I wasn't really promoting myself except like to my friends or whatever. So I had to come up with a name and so whatever. And so I ended up calling it Red River Trivia, and I made a Facebook page. And so for a while, that's all it was. It wasn't even like a real business. I didn't actually establish an LLC or anything like that. It was just, I need a name for it. And I called it Red River Trivia. And it was just me. I was writing the questions and hosting the games. I was working full time at this time as well. I was working in education, working at a college. And, before I knew it, I'm hosting, maybe 3-4 nights a week or something. And making pretty good money, making a little extra income there on top of my full-time job. And eventually the school that I worked at closed down. And I was like, I didn't have really anything else going on at that time rather than, I have a master's degree and I have a fair amount of experience in education and teaching and stuff. So I have marketable skills. It's not like I wouldn't have been able to find a job, but the trivia thing was already going pretty well. I'd probably gotten the trivia thing up to a point where I was making like $15,000-$20,000 a year, on top of my full-time job. And I was like, well, it wouldn't take a whole lot more to turn that into something I could be making a living on. And so, I got a website. I started using some of the other social media platforms, started like spending more time promoting it and stuff like that. And then I actually got like a tax guy and filled out paperwork to turn it into a real business and all that. And then so for several years, that was how I was making my living was through Red River Trivia. I was, I ended up, we're skipping a bunch of stuff here, but basically at the height of Red River Trivia, I had like 10 hosts working for me. We were doing something like 14 or 15 games a week, plus like private events for, private corporate events, holiday events, stuff like that. So, there were nights where we had like 4 games going on. And so I'm like kind of managing all of that, the hosts and stuff. And I was writing most of the games, but I had some of my hosts writing for me as well. And so, yeah, that was how I made my living for several years. And then 2022 came along. And when you rely on events that are happening in bars and restaurants and breweries for your living, 2022 put an end to all of that, right? So yeah, it's just middle of March or so 2020, not 2022, 2020, the pandemic. So yeah, around the middle of March 2020, all at once, all of my locations shut down, and I didn't have trivia events anymore. And so, my cousin, who has a master's in business administration, got a hold of me. He's very entrepreneurial minded. He's a really smart guy, and he really knows about business. He knows how to make businesses work and make businesses thrive. In fact, at this time, I think he'd been working as a business consultant to help like other businesses build their brand and stuff like that. But anyway, so he saw this opportunity like, okay, well, we could probably figure out a way to do trivia online because we can't do it in bars and restaurants and stuff like that. And he had purchased several years earlier, just as like a business venture, he had purchased a database of trivia questions without necessarily a real idea of what he was going to do with it. But he and a friend had spent some time creating a trivia app, but they both were working full time. This is something they were just doing in their spare time. It wasn't like they were all in or had worked like super, super hard on it. It was kind of just something they were doing in their spare time. Like, all right, well, we bought this trivia database. What should we do with it? So they had created an app, but it wasn't, it wasn't doing super well or whatever. It was just kind of something they were working on the side. And then, when the pandemic hit, my cousin got a hold of me because he knew that I'd been, experienced as a trivia host, that I'd been making my living running this trivia company for a while. And he was just like, hey, do you want to help me put on some online trivia events? And I was like, sure. And I had no idea how we were going to do it or whatever. We just kind of figured it out. I mean, from the ground up, we decided to use Zoom, and we just, I wrote the games, and he had a guy who was like building this brand anyway, or building this website, this platform where you can host online trivia games. It's called Trivia Hub. If you want to check it out, the website is triviahub.io. Anyway, and in 2020, our first game was on tax day, if I remember correctly. It was April 15th, 2020. And it just blew up from there. There's other companies doing this now, but we kind of got there first. Like the shutdown pretty much was like the middle of March. We started hosting games in the middle of April. So we got on this really quickly. We were kind of the first company to do it. And it just grew and grew and grew. Within a month, we were doing 20 games a week. each month was just compounding on itself. When we got to December 2020, in December 2020, we hosted almost 1,200 events. We had like 40 or 50 hosts working for us at that point. I mean, we've got a full marketing team, a full sales team, a full customer service team, and I'm the entire content department at this point. I'm writing all the questions, coordinating with, because we've got people meeting with the clients to figure out what they want for content in their game. I'm creating that content, making sure it's in the right place, all that. I hired somebody right around October, I think, to help me out. But anyway, I'm getting into details that aren't really that important. But anyway, that was in 2020, and that was the job that I'd been doing until now. And I was, I'm still running Red River Trivia in Fargo, but there's just not a whole lot going on. We're doing some corporate events. We're hosting at a bar one night a week, but it never grew back anywhere near what it was before. So that's kind of my side thing where I make a little money on that, but not a ton. But my full-time job since 2020 has been Trivia Hub. And, since more places have gone back to work now, and also, some other companies that do the same thing have popped up. So there's some competition. Trivia Hub's business has fallen off quite a bit. It's still a viable product. It's still a viable business, just not at the staffing numbers that we were working with. So basically, I got let go because, well, I'll tell you this straight up. Since I was the entire content department at first, so my title was director of content, and the guy that I hired to help with the holidays in 2020, we had enough business going for both of us to be full-time. But I'm a person who does not like being the boss. I don't like being a director. I don't like being a manager. It's very stressful for me, and it is not good for my mental health. Like, I got to a point where I would wake up at 4:00 in the morning and I would just get up and start working because I couldn't sleep, because I'd be sitting there being like, oh, did I get everything ready? Did I double check everything? I'm too freaking neurotic about making sure everything is ready and stuff. And it just wasn't good for me. So I switched places with him. Literally, a guy that I hired, I was like, hey man, do you want to be my boss? And I can take your spot. So that's what we did. And so that's why, like, a lot of people are saying like, well, why were you let go? You helped create this business, you and your cousin together created it. And that's true. But I did that to myself because I didn't want to be the director. So obviously when it comes time that, hey, we need to cut back down to one person in the content department, it's going to be the person who's running the department, right? But anyway, so I just found out like 3 days ago or whatever that I don't have a job anymore. So, and it's been 15 years or something. The school, I finished grad school in 2008, and I got a job at this place called Globe University, and that was where I worked for like 10 years. And then since then, I've only been doing Red River Trivia and then Trivia Hub. And that, Red River Trivia and Trivia Hub was at home, unless when I lived in Fargo and was going out and hosting games in the evening. But otherwise, like, the work I was doing was at home. So it's been 2008 was the last time I actually went out and applied for jobs. And 2016, I think, was the last time I actually had a job where I had to like get up in the morning and go out and work, So all of a sudden finding myself, without a job, it's a big change. And it's especially scary because, like I said, we just with the new water main and the new air conditioner, we took out a loan for like almost $30,000. And so I was already a little bit nervous about money, a little bit nervous about that. And then all of a sudden you hit me with, hey, you don't have a job. So, yeah. And so there kind of a lot of stress dropped on me all at once, which is why, and I was, a week or two back, I was like, all right, I should probably start easing into, I had taken a break for the holidays. I was like, I should start easing into getting tape done for this next card. And then when all this stuff happened, I was like, I don't have the mental capacity to deal with that right now. I need to be worrying about making money, getting a job, that sort of thing. So that's why I'm not going to be putting out content for this next card. But anyway, and then a few days ago, actually, this happened the same day that I lost my job. So it was a lot to take in all at once. But I don't know how to tell this in the most. I'm trying to think of like, how can I build up suspense and tell this in the most interesting way? But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to come right out and tell you. I was diagnosed with autism. And so that is a big change in my life. It's something that's overwhelming. It's not something that's negative to me. To me, it's a positive. To me, it's very validating. It's very vindicating. It's helped me to understand a lot about who I am. It's helped to answer a lot of questions about difficulties that I've had my entire life. It's helped me to be a little bit more understanding and forgiving with myself when it comes to things that are tend to be easy for other people that are really difficult for me. I don't know how much detail I want to get into all of this, but like, it's not like it was 100% a surprise. Just one second. I mean, my whole childhood, I had different kinds of difficulties, I guess, that led my parents to understand. My mom told me when I was a little older, she's like, if you were born now, we probably would have had you tested for ADHD and autism and things like that. But people, people just didn't know about stuff like that then. People didn't talk. I was born in 1979. People just didn't really talk about stuff like that then. But it was always apparent that something was a little off. There were things that I struggled with that were easy for other people. I mean, I was always smart. As far as standardized tests and stuff, I tested like highest in my class, but so there was something off with like, why is this kid so smart, but he struggles with some things that are really easy for most kids kind of thing, so there was always a little bit of a disconnect there. And there were several instances over the years in my adulthood where people suggested the possibility that I might be on the spectrum. There was a friend of mine that I lived with who had Asperger's, which is, if I had been diagnosed like 10 years ago, that's what would have been diagnosed with. Asperger's is not a diagnosis that exists anymore. They made some changes to the DSM manual in 2013 to autism, where they kind of group things all together. It's all called autism spectrum disorder now, which is what I was diagnosed with. But I likely would have been diagnosed with Asperger's before, if that helps. If you know anyone who has Asperger's, that's pretty much what my diagnosis is. But I lived with a guy who had Asperger's years ago, and there were numerous times where he sort of suggested, man, sometimes I think you might be on the spectrum. And I kind of laughed it off and didn't really take it all that seriously. And then there was a woman that I worked with at Globe University, that school I was talking about. I worked with her for years, and she was a social worker, had a background in that sort of thing and knew a fair amount about autism. And she started kind of just suggesting like, well, I think you're on the spectrum, kind of, like in passing, not making a big deal about it. But, sometimes I would say something that I didn't understand or something that, whatever it might be. And she would say, well, honey, that's because you're on the spectrum. And I kind of shrugged it off. I didn't think much of it. I knew she meant it. I knew she thought it was true, but I just didn't, I was like, whatever. I don't think I am or whatever. And then a few years after that, this would have been about 7 years ago now, there was a girl that I dated who had a child who had autism. And she had kind of suggested to me, she said, you remind me of my son, like certain things that you do and certain things that you say, and just kind of certain behaviors that remind me of some of my son's behaviors. And then after we broke up, she sent me a book in the mail that was about diagnosing high functioning autism in adults. And I was just like, okay, I don't know, whatever. I still didn't think much of it. I mean, that was when I really started looking into it more. That was when I started looking into the possibility more. But then there were certain diagnostic criteria that I didn't feel applied to me, and so I just kind of shrugged it off. Now I've come to understand the different ways that that these diagnostic criteria can present. So like, a lot of people, that their entire context for understanding autism is something like Rain Man, where in some ways he was very high functioning, very high level intelligence, but not high functioning at all as far as his ability to live unassisted, right? Obviously I'm a person who is able to live unassisted, but I definitely have difficulties that having a support system in place would have helped me with, and would still help me with today. But anyway, I moved to Las Vegas in January 2018. No, July 2018. I met my wife in January 2018. I moved here in July, which is, my wife lives in Las Vegas. So, I came here on vacation when I was living in Fargo, met a girl, 6 months later, moved to Las Vegas. Anyway, so I've been living here in Las Vegas with Holly for almost 5 years now. And she started suggesting, I would say maybe within the last 2 years or so, started suggesting, I think that you're on the autism spectrum. And actually, those since this is an MMA channel, I think that this is something that will sort of interest people a little bit. It's a little bit more on topic. Is we were driving to California one time, and I love trivia, I love MMA, and sometimes I would have my wife, like, just for something to do in the car, I'd be like, quiz me, find some trivia questions and quiz me or whatever. And we were driving to California, and I said, quiz me on MMA fighter nicknames. And she just went and she found some kind of list or database or something. She found some sort of list on the internet, and it was like 300 MMA nicknames. And she quizzed me on all of them. And I only missed like 6 of them or something. And that was when she said, honestly, I really think you might be on the spectrum. It is not normal. That is not normal behavior. Like, you should not know 200 and freaking, whatever. And so over time she became, and also my wife has worked in social work her whole life, and she's a therapist for children. Like, she knows a fair amount about autism. So I started to take it more seriously. She reached a point where she was 100% convinced of it. Like when I told her that I was going to look into getting a diagnosis, she was like, babe, I don't even think you need a diagnosis. I think that we know. And in the autism community, self-diagnosis is recognized by a lot of people, especially because it's known how difficult it is to get a diagnosis as an adult, because there are not a lot of professionals who do adult diagnoses. And because of that, because there are not a lot of them out there, the wait lists are very, very long. It's hard to get in. I was on a wait list for almost a year before I finally got in for an assessment. And so, my wife kind of was already 100% convinced of it and thought it was almost like a waste of time for me to even get a diagnosis. Not that she didn't support me doing so, but those were her thoughts, is like, I don't think you need it. I wanted to do it for me because I wanted to, for me, like I said, for me, it's been really, really validating. Just validating that, just a lot of the difficulties that I've had in my life, and understanding why those things are the way they are, and just understanding things about myself a little bit better. Tom Sparby says, looking good, brother. How's it going, Tom? Nate Diaz too. Do you mean Nate Diaz has a diagnosis? He might, that would make sense to me. Is there any benefits that an autism diagnosis gets you? I don't really know. I just got the diagnosis a few days ago. I haven't. My brother 100% is just never. Yeah. That's kind of how I was living for a long time. As far as the benefits, I don't know. There are, like legally, I'm able to get workplace supports. If I can request things like, and I'm looking for a job right now. I don't know what my next job is going to be, but I can request supports, and they're legally required to provide them for me. Like if I need a quiet place to close the door to work, or things. I don't even really know what the different accommodations are that I'm allowed to request. But as far as benefits, I don't know. I've looked at that a little bit. I don't really. It's like I've been living my whole life without benefits and support and accommodations, and so it's not something I've thought about a ton. I've gotten by, I've lived my life, but at the same time, I can look back and see many different ways in school and work and in my personal life, whatever, where their accommodations would have helped me a lot. So it's something that I'll definitely be thinking about more and looking into more. But at this point, I don't know. But one thing that it's been really interesting with this is. And actually, my getting into this whole sphere of content creation with MMA gambling is part of what helped me to realize this even further. That looking into getting a diagnosis was something that I should do, because I've always been aware that I experience some things differently than other people do. That my viewpoint is a little bit different. One of the things that tends to come along with autism is more interest in objects than in people. Having difficulty connecting with people on a real emotional level. I'm a person, I've always had like kind of a lot of friends, but just kind of like drinking buddies, kind of very surface friends. I've never really had like really deep friendships where I connect with people a lot. And one thing that I came to understand that as I got into this world of getting to know a bunch more, because I've been, well, another part of autism, of course, is the special interests thing. I've been obsessed with mixed martial arts. I mean, I came out of the womb obsessed with martial arts, and in 1993, when the UFC became a thing, I was obsessed immediately and have been ever since. All I ever talk about is MMA. All I talk about is betting on fights. Like that is definitely my special interest. And I will definitely corner somebody and talk about betting MMA for an hour while their eyes glaze over and they stare at me. Pretty classic autism kind of stuff. But anyway, I realized the ways in which my experience of the sport is very different, because people, most people can rattle off like, oh, these are my favorite fighters, and when this person is fighting, I get really excited and I support them and I want them to win and whatever. And that is not the way I experience the sport at all. I don't have favorite fighters. I'm a fan of mixed martial arts. I'm a fan of the sport, of the action that happens in the cage. For the most part, I don't really even pay that much attention to who the fighters are. And that's why starting to do MMA gambling and starting to watch tape and break down fights and analyze styles, it's been really, really difficult for me because for the most part, if you name a fighter and ask me how they fight or what their style is, I won't even know because I don't really pay attention to the individuals, which is kind of classic autism stuff. I connect with the sport. I don't connect as much with the people. And so and also another thing that tends to go along with autism is paying really close attention to details but not paying attention to the bigger picture, and that's definitely something that resonates for me because when I watch a fight, i'm completely I'm completely narrowed in on that fight. I'm not thinking about what other fights are happening next. I'm not thinking about where those fighters fit into the division. You know, some people like they'll watch an event and then afterwards they're like, these are the fights that I think should happen next, and this guy should fight for the title or whatever. I don't even like most fighters. I couldn't even tell you what weight class they're in. I couldn't even tell you who the last person was that they fought. I watch every fight individually, separated from any other fights. I don't know I don't know if I'm describing that in a way that makes sense, but that's my experience of the sport. And just a lot of these things, I started to realize how different my experience of this is than other people that I talk to. Another thing that tends to go along with, and Herb Dean is the gold standard, just mentioned this, autism and attention deficit, the two big ones that people ignore instead of getting a diagnosis. Yeah. And I previously did have an ADHD diagnosis and a social anxiety diagnosis. And the doctor that I went to get my autism assessment said that, and this is, I read a bunch about this too, said that it's very common that people are diagnosed with other things because the doctors that they were going to were noticing certain pieces, but they were failing to put all the pieces together into a complete diagnosis. A lot of the traits of autism and a lot of the traits of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, they cross over. And same with social anxiety. Having difficulty with back and forth communication, difficulty with social skills is a big part of autism. And so, those things had been recognized earlier. I had an ADHD diagnosis and a social anxiety diagnosis, but it turns out that those were only capturing pieces of the bigger picture. And the like social anxiety thing, or the difficulty with back and forth communication. That's why I always do my breakdown videos by myself. I don't get stressed out like sitting here doing this. I can do this all day. But the minute I add somebody else into it, I'm very, very nervous. I have a really hard time with that back and forth. So that's definitely part of it too. But yeah, and that's so I guess part of what I'm saying is that this diagnosis has helped me to relax on my own expectations of myself a little bit. Because another thing that kind of goes along with this is some of the people that I've met through this community who, they do tape on not just the UFC, but smaller shows and stuff. And well, let's use Couch Warrior as an example. He's in law school. I mean, that's a lot of freaking work, right? You're in law school and he still finds time to tape UFC and Bellator and LFA and PFL. And I'm like, how do you do that, dude? How do you juggle all of this? And he's like, I pop in if I've got a little time, like say I've got a half-hour window of time, I'm going to pop on and do some tape and whatever. Another thing that tends to go along with autism, and is very much a thing for me, is I have a lot of difficulty changing between different tasks. I can't just jump into something for 20 minutes and then jump into something else. I have to have a really big chunk of time because, I tend to hyper focus on things. And if I can't hyper focus, I kind of can't focus at all, if that makes sense. So if I don't have a big chunk of time to really sit down and get my focus on something and dig into it, then I won't do it at all. So that's why getting tape done, making videos, doing my write-up, doing all of this stuff, it's really difficult for me to fit into my life because I can't just pop in and do it for a second. I need to have like a big chunk of time. So that's something that I struggle with. And that's why I decided I wasn't going to do tape for this next card, is because once these other things started to come up or whatever, like I said, I just decided I'm gonna forgive myself a little bit and allow myself to do that. When, like, if I've got too busy of a week and I'm not sure how I'm gonna get tape done and whatever, like what I do, for the last year or whatever that I've been doing this, I'll just stress out like crazy. Like, oh my God, I don't know how I'm gonna get this stuff done. I don't know how I'm gonna fit all this in, and I'm freaking out about it like it's a freaking job, and it's not. I don't get paid to do this. nobody is forcing me to do this. It's just a hobby that I do for the heck of it, So like just reminding myself that like, it's okay if I don't get tape done this week. If I've got too much stuff going on and I can't do it, it's okay. Just chill out. Just don't do it. So I'm trying to be, a little bit more forgiving with myself as far as that kind of thing. And just the way that I experience the world, I guess. And like, and I've had a lot of stress about these kinds of things. Like that's another thing that the diagnosis does for me is helps me to like, people who've watched my videos for a long time. One thing I talk about a lot is how terrible my working memory is. I have a really hard time with, if you quizzed me on Sunday, like I sit down and I watch the whole card every Saturday when there's a UFC card. If you quizzed me on Sunday, I won't even remember who won most of the fights because like I said, my brain experiences each fight kind of by itself. And then when that fight's done, I'm on to the next one. I don't think about the other one anymore. That's over. That doesn't matter anymore. And that's also why every time I do tape, it's like I'm starting from scratch because I can't really remember what I've seen about this fighter before, because that's like big picture stuff. And I'm just focused on this moment. I'm only focused on what's happening right now. So like when if I'm doing a show with somebody and they start asking me questions about like a fighter that I wasn't prepared to talk about, or a fight that I didn't do tape on or something, I'm clueless. And it causes me a lot of stress because I'm like, this is like, I love MMA. Like I'm supposed to know a lot about this. And then it makes me feel stupid when that information isn't there for me, or if it is, when I can't recall it, I have a really hard time with that. And so I end up feeling guilty and feeling kind of dumb and stuff. And I get worried that people are thinking like, well, why doesn't this guy know anything about MMA if he's supposed to be such a big MMA fan? Because if you mention like, oh, remember in this fight, what happened or whatever. And I'm just like, no, I don't remember at all. Because that's just how my brain works or whatever. But so yeah, getting into this, watching tape on fights and taking notes and trying to remember these things and apply them to analyzing fights. I think it's a little bit more of a struggle for me than it is for some other people, but in some ways I have a memory that works really well, but that's more so for like stats and that sort of thing. I'm going off and most of this probably isn't very interesting, but it's just some of what I've learned about autism has helped me to understand my experience of some of these things. And another example is, another common trait of autism is, obviously sensory issues. And one thing that can go along with those sensory issues sometimes is an inability to figure out what is important and what to focus on. I have a hard time separating sensory input. Like if I'm watching TV and my wife walks into the room and starts talking to me, I have to mute the TV. And she knows this. She'll like start to talk, and then she sees me grab for the remote. She'll just stop and wait because I have to mute the TV and be like, okay, now go. Because if there's two sources of sound, I can't separate them, and I'm physically like unable to separate them, to figure out what to pay attention to. And this is what happens to me when I watch tape too. And this is why my notes are so long and so detailed, is because I don't know which things to pay attention to. I don't know which things are important. So when I'm watching tape, I'm basically typing play by play. I'm basically typing everything that's happening in the fight because I don't know what to pay attention to. And I found out that that's normal. And so I was like, all right, I feel a little bit better about that. But that's also part of the reason that I have trouble remembering what happens in a fight, is while I'm watching the screen, what the autism brain tends to do is rather than focusing in on what's important and figuring out what details to pay attention to, I'm trying to pay attention to every single detail all the time. And so what that results in a lot of the time is not remembering anything, because I'm trying to remember everything so I don't actually catch anything. Whereas if I knew which details to hone in on and pay attention to, I might be able to remember them. And that's why I have an excellent memory for statistics and things like that. I have excellent memory for things that are already broken down into pieces for me, because then I don't have to figure out what to pay attention to because it's right there. A statistic is already broken down into an easily digestible piece of information. Whereas if I'm watching something on a screen visually, there's just too much there. I don't know how to break it down into bits of information that I can remember. So hopefully I explained that in a way that made sense, but I'm just, it's all really fascinating to me because I like I said, I was on the wait list for about a year before I actually got in for an assessment. And during that time, I learned everything that I hyper focused on autism. funnily enough. And so I learned everything that I could learn about how autism presents, and the ways that it's assessed, and reasons that it's missed a lot of time as a diagnosis in children, and the ways that it presents differently in adulthood than in childhood. And what I learned is that there are 7 different diagnostic criteria that are used to diagnose autism. And they're broken down into 2 groups. The first group, there are 3 diagnostic criteria that are all related to communication. You have to meet all 3 of those criteria. The second group, there are 4, and you have to meet 2 of those 4. So in the end, you only have to meet 5 of the 7 criteria to get a diagnosis. And the doctor had me comfortably meeting all 7 of them. So it was pretty much a no-brainer. And then she also talked about, because part of the diagnosis is, we did a bunch of IQ testing, and then also a lot of just interviewing me about different, what is your experience of this? How do you experience this? Talk to me about that. Is this something that you experience regularly? Talk to me about that, and that kind of thing. And then part of it was also, and like, this isn't really something I was even aware of while we were doing it, but part of it is that the doctor also just observes your behavior while you're doing all of this, while you're doing the interview, while you're doing the IQ testing. The doctor is simply observing your behavior. And she brought in some fidget toys, all kinds of different things, she's like, because you're sitting here just while I'm talking to you, and people like to have something to like fidget with or whatever. And it was 2 days worth of testing. The first day we did most of it, and then the second day she also had my wife come in because she wanted to there were certain questions about myself that I didn't feel I was able to answer as well. Because the thing is, it's like, I've only been me, I've only been one person. So like, she was asking about like the literal thing, people with autism tend to be very literal and tend to have a hard time understanding figurative language, understanding metaphors and that kind of thing. And I was like, I don't think I'm super overly literal. I don't think I have trouble understanding metaphors and figurative language, but I'm not sure, because unless I was able to enter the brain of someone who does understand figurative language, how do I know if I understand it the same way as they do or not? So some of the things I just wasn't quite sure. So she did have my wife come in the second day and just had her kind of talk about some of the things that she has noticed. Because like I said, my wife was 100% convinced. So basically the doctor was like, okay, so you're convinced that he's on the autism spectrum. Just kind of tell me why. What are the things that you notice that make you think that? Just a second. My cat wants to go inside. I'll be right back. Hey, buddy. Hey, buddy. You want to go inside? Here you go. I'm doing a live stream right now, but I'll be with you a little bit. Okay, sorry. Oh, by the way, I put on my send me location shirt because that's my message to 2023. I'm like, you want to do this 2023? Let's do this. Send me location. Anyway, I totally forgot what I was actually just talking about, but let me see what Herb Dean, how can there be a year-long wait list? That's disgusting. Yeah, dude. And that's apparently really common too. I've spent a lot of time reading about this stuff, and I like joining some groups on Facebook and stuff like that too. And yeah, apparently for adult diagnosis specifically, because there are so few people who diagnose adults. Like, any major city is going to have an autism center. Most of them do. Some of them have more than one, but most autism centers don't diagnose adults. Basically, like, diagnosing adult autism, the research behind that, the methodology that they use to diagnose, it's still very much in its infancy. People are still, even the people who've been diagnosing because people still think of autism as a childhood disorder largely, and I don't really know why that is, but the methodology for diagnosing adults is still, there's a long way to go on that. There's a long way to go on people seeing a need for it, people taking it seriously. So yeah, it's very, very hard to find someone who diagnoses adults. And because there are so few of them out there, people find them and the wait list. Yeah. And I didn't even know how long the wait list was going to be. She told me it would be pretty long. She didn't really know. She was like, it's going to be at least like several months before we get you in. And it ended up being 11 months. So, and that was partially only because I kept emailing her office manager and stuff and being like, hey, do you know anything about when this is going to happen? Anyway. Yeah, I can't remember what the heck I was talking about before anyway, but yeah, it feels good to have talked about some of this stuff anyway. There's only one. Herb Dean is the gold standard. Is kind of the only dude who's been in here watching anyway. I appreciate you being in here, dude. A couple other folks popped in. I don't know. I mean, I'll be, obviously this video will be up. I don't know if anybody else will watch it or not, but, and I haven't made, I still haven't, like I've told a few of my close friends. I told my brothers, I still haven't told my parents. I still haven't made any kind of, public declaration on Twitter or Facebook or anything like that. So I guess in a way, this is almost like my public declaration right here. Gabe Huber popped in. Awesome. How's it going, Gabe? Great to see you back, Eric. Wish you an awesome betting year, sir. Thanks for the great content, man. Thank you so much, Gabe. I appreciate you a lot, man. Gabe always sends me messages and always comments on my videos, and we talk about fights and kind of post slips back and forth with each other and stuff. He's a good dude. So anyway, I think I'm going to call it. My wife just got home from work. I think we're going to go probably make something to eat, maybe go sit in the hot tub a little bit and just relax. That's the interesting thing about this, finding myself without a job. Luckily, my job is going to pay me for a month they're paying me for the next month and not really expecting me to work so that I can make some money while I'm, job searching and stuff. So I spent my whole day today updating my resume and updating cover letter and doing all that kind of crap. And I've been applying for tutoring positions and applying for some, I found an associate dean position that I'm going to apply for, and like a registrar and that sort of stuff. Herb Dean says, any bets for this card? Man, I still don't know. Like I said, I'm not going to do any tape at all. I'm just allowing myself to not worry about that because I got other crap I got to worry about. But I will be, in addition to making content, I consume content every week. Like I usually listen to Clint's show. I listen to Punch List. I listen to Dog or Pass. I listen to the MMA Vivisection, and then, if I get through all those, there's other ones that I listen to as well. So pretty much what I'll be doing for this card is I'll just be relying on other people's information likely. And then, I'll be reading some written breakdowns and that kind of thing. And yeah, I'm sure I'll have some bets, but they'll be filtered, it'll be information coming from other people and filtered through my noggin and then choosing which bets I'm going to make. So it'll be mostly like secondary information kind of thing. So at the moment, I don't have any bets at all, but I'm sure I will end up placing some when I get a chance to look through some stuff. But anyway, I appreciate you guys popping in and listening. I know this was not even really like an MMA related thing, but it's it's a big change in my life, and it's just something that I wanted to talk about. And I appreciate y'all listening. Anybody watching this later, I appreciate you listening. As always, please like and comment, subscribe if you haven't yet. I don't know what, I'm not going anywhere. I'm Erik Bets Fights is going to be a thing. I'm still going to be watching tape. I'm still going to be betting on fights. I don't know what this next year is going to look like as far as my ability to do tape and put out content. I mean, the nice thing was the job that I'd been doing that I just lost, I did it from home. So it was easy for me to get the things done that I needed to. I could like take a break in the middle of my workday if I needed to. I'm going to be focusing on looking for a job for the next few weeks or however long it takes. And then even after that, I don't know what job I'm going to get. I don't know what my hours are going to be. I don't know what any of that's going to look like. So we'll see, as far as what my content schedule is going to look like and what I'm going to be able to realistically do. But regardless, I appreciate those of you who've been supporting me all along. Please like and comment and subscribe. And thanks so much for being here. And I'll be talking to all you guys soon. I'm going to shout out who we had: Paul Harris, Daz Files, Thomas Sparby, a buddy from my hometown popped in, Herb Dean is the gold standard, and Gabe Huber. Appreciate all you guys. Thanks so much for popping in. Have a great night, and I will talk to you soon, and enjoy the fights this weekend, everybody.